I don't want to think the worst. Where is she?
She lights up any room she walks in. This is not like her to just go missing. You know, she has a family that loves her, cares about her.
Alisa Goods was supposed to make a simple trip to CVS. Instead, she disappeared. For nearly 2 weeks, her family searched for her, called hospitals, checked morgues, and desperately tried to figure out where their mother and grandmother had gone. Then her phone started sending messages. The messages asked for help, then gas money, then Bitcoin. But there was one huge problem: Alisa was missing. So who was actually using her phone? And perhaps even more importantly, how did Alisa go from leaving her friend's apartment for a trip to CVS to eventually being found dead near Harry Reid International Airport? Because once you put the timeline together, there are some questions that I believe are going to make you stop and think. Welcome back to Case Watch. And before we get into everything, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button for me right now. I put a lot of time into researching these cases and putting these stories together, and your subscription helps this channel continue to grow. And please don't watch the beginning and leave. Stay with me because we're going through this entire timeline, including the friend who was with Alisa, the strange phone messages, the CVS trip, the airport surveillance, and what police say happened during Alisa's final moments. And I want you involved. I'm going to ask you questions throughout this story, so don't keep your thoughts to yourself. If something doesn't make sense, tell me in the comments. If you think you know what happened, give me your theory. And if your opinion changes as we get deeper into the case, tell us what changed your mind. Let's begin. Alisa Goods was 63 years old, a grandmother of 5 from New York who was visiting Las Vegas. She was staying with a longtime friend named Roger John. According to reports, Alisa had known John for years and had visited him in Las Vegas before. This wasn't a stranger she had just met. It was someone she knew and trusted enough to stay with while visiting the city. And then came August 8th. According to John, Alisa left his apartment at around 12:45 p.m. to take a bus to a nearby CVS. She was reportedly going there to pick up iron pills. John later described seeing her walk down the stairs before he said goodbye. That would become the last time he saw her. Now listen carefully to what he said.
I was like, she should have been home already. But I didn't think much of it because sometimes, she go out and she shops, she stays out. And I kept texting and calling and texting and calling.
His account is important because he was the person Alisa was staying with, and his interview helps establish the beginning of the timeline. But I also want to be fair here. Roger John was not publicly identified as a suspect. Reports said he cooperated with investigators, and the family said police cleared him. So we're not going to turn the fact that he was the last known person to see Alisa into an accusation. Instead, let's focus on what happened after she left. Alisa was supposed to go to CVS, but she never returned to the apartment. At first, John reportedly wasn't immediately alarmed because Alisa sometimes spent hours shopping. But eventually, he began calling and texting her. When she still didn't return, her family was alerted. By August 10th, Alisa was reported missing, and her family immediately started searching. Her daughter Kristen traveled from New Jersey to Las Vegas. Family members checked hospitals. They checked morgues. They checked jails. They were trying to find any trace of her. And I want you to put yourself in their position for a moment. Imagine your mother leaves the house to make what should be an ordinary shopping trip. Hours pass. She doesn't come back. You call her. No answer. Then the hours turn into a day. Then another. And suddenly you're in another state, checking hospitals and morgues. What would you be thinking at that point? Would you believe she simply got lost? Would you immediately fear that something had happened to her? Tell me in the comments. Because the family had another reason to be concerned. Alisa had recently undergone several leg surgeries, and her family believed she would have difficulty walking long distances. They also said she commonly used buses when getting around Las Vegas. So the question became, where could she have gone? And then, 2 days after she was reported missing, something happened that completely changed the family's fear into suspicion. Her phone became active. On August 12th, Alisa's family began receiving messages from her phone. At first, you can imagine the hope. Maybe she's alive. Maybe she's trying to tell them where she is. Maybe she's finally reaching out. But the messages were strange. They reportedly asked for help. They asked for gas money. And eventually they asked for Bitcoin. CBS News. And this is where I want to ask you. If your missing mother suddenly sent you a message asking for gas money, would you believe it? Or would you immediately question it? because Alisa's family noticed something that made the gas request particularly strange. Alisa did not drive. There was no car. Her niece Alana Calloway reportedly questioned the person sending the messages about why gas money was needed. And then she decided to test the person. She reportedly mentioned someone named Kelly. There was no Kelly in the family. If Alisa were really on the other end of the phone, why wouldn't she ask who Kelly was? Instead, the person reportedly continued the conversation and asked for money. That was a major red flag for the family. They began believing that someone else had access to Alisa's phone. And I want to know what you think. Would that have convinced you? If someone used your missing relative's phone but couldn't recognize a fake name you introduced into the conversation, would you immediately believe the person was an imposter? Drop your answer below, because this is where the case became even more frightening. The family was no longer simply looking for Alisa. They were now wondering whether someone had her phone. And if someone had her phone, they began asking themselves an even more terrifying question. Did that person also have Alisa? Her niece publicly raised the possibility that Alisa had been kidnapped. Her son, Kevin Newton, also received unusual messages and publicly pleaded for his mother to come home. But there was a problem with that theory. Police later said the people behind the suspicious messages were unrelated, bad actors, and that investigators did not believe the messages were connected to Alisa's disappearance. That is extremely important, because the messages may have been disturbing. They may have been fraudulent. They may have caused the family enormous emotional pain. But according to police, they were not connected to what happened to Alisa. So now we have two separate mysteries: the phone messages and Alisa's disappearance. But there was still something the family knew about her movements. She had apparently made it to a store. Her family said Alisa was later seen at a store near Paradise and Flamingo Roads, where she reportedly bought supplements and water. Her daughter said she had spoken with the CVS manager about her mother being there, although she had not personally watched the CVS surveillance footage.
She visited a CVS in the Las Vegas area. I did not see the CVS footage myself, but I was privy to some of the footage by talking to the CVS manager that she was there.
But after that visit, they say the trail went cold.
And from that little trip, her friend learned that she did not come back as she said she would. He is not a threat, and he's also been cleared by the police. There isn't anything to investigate in terms of his knowledge. He accurately stated what happened, and he also has been digitally found to be truthful in what he stated.
And that detail changes the question. Because now it wasn't simply, where did Alisa go after leaving the apartment? There was another known point in the timeline. The apartment, then the shopping trip, then nothing. But investigators would eventually discover something even more important: surveillance footage near the airport. According to police, video from August 8th showed Alisa near Harry Reid International Airport. And what that footage reportedly captured is heartbreaking. Police said Alisa fell down an embankment. She got back up, and then she collapsed again. After that, there was no further movement observed. Her location could not be seen from the street. Because this is the part one want you to think about. Alisa left a friend's apartment to go shopping. She was apparently seen at a store. Then somehow she ended up near the airport. And police say surveillance shows her falling, getting up, and eventually collapsing. How do you think she got there? Was she taking a bus? Was she trying to reach another destination? Could someone have given her a ride? Did she become disoriented? Or do you think there is still a major piece of this journey that the public doesn't know? Tell me your theory, and please explain why you think that. Because simply saying something is suspicious doesn't tell us much. Tell me which part of the timeline makes you suspicious. There is another detail that makes this especially difficult to understand. Alisa's family had said she couldn't walk long distances comfortably because of her recent leg surgeries. So how did she end up near the airport? Maybe she took public transportation. Maybe someone drove her. Maybe the distance was manageable. Maybe something happened that caused her to change direction. We don't know. And this is exactly where speculation can become dangerous. We don't have evidence publicly showing that someone kidnapped Alisa. We don't have evidence publicly showing that someone attacked her. And we don't have evidence connecting the people who sent the Bitcoin messages to her death. What we do have is surveillance footage showing her final movements near the airport. And that footage may actually be one of the most important pieces of evidence investigators have, because it gives investigators a window into what happened shortly before Alisa died. Now the next question is, What caused her to collapse? Was she suffering a medical emergency? Was she injured? Did her leg problems contribute? Was she disoriented? Or was there another factor? At the moment, we shouldn't pretend to know. Police had not publicly released the cause and manner of death in the latest reporting. So if you see someone online saying, "This proves she was murdered," remember that surveillance showing someone collapse does not by itself establish homicide. And if someone says, "This proves it was a medical emergency," that's also going beyond what we know. The honest answer is, we don't know yet. Now let's move to August 20th. Nearly 2 weeks after Alisa disappeared, police received a report of a deceased woman near Harry Reid International Airport. Officers responded to a drainage ditch area near the airport. The woman was identified as Alisa Goods. The search was over, but the answers her family had been desperately looking for were not. Think about that moment. For days, her family had been saying, "Help us find her." They had distributed flyers. They had searched. They had contacted hospitals. They had checked morgues. They had dealt with strange messages. They had hoped that the next phone call would be the one telling them Alisa was alive. Instead, they received the news that she had been found dead. And that creates another question. Why wasn't she found sooner? Police said her body was in an area that could not be seen from the street. That may help explain why she remained undiscovered. But I understand why people will still ask whether the area had already been searched and when investigators first discovered the surveillance footage. Those are reasonable questions. Do you think the fact that she was in a drainage ditch explains why she wasn't found for so long? Or do you think investigators should provide more information about the search? Tell me what you think. Now let's return to the phone. This is where I think many viewers may disagree. Some people will say the phone messages were clearly connected to the disappearance because they came from Alisa's phone after she vanished. Others will say the police explanation makes sense. Scammers or other bad actors saw an opportunity and exploited the family. Based on the information currently available, police reportedly believe the messages were unrelated. But imagine being the family. You're not sitting in a police briefing room with all the evidence. You're receiving messages from your missing mother's phone. Someone is asking you for money. Someone is asking for Bitcoin. Someone doesn't recognize the people you mention. How are you supposed to know whether you're dealing with a scam or someone holding your loved one hostage? You don't. And that's why the family's fear made sense. But now that Alisa has been found, the phone messages take on another meaning. They may have been a cruel distraction during the search. They may have made the family believe that Alisa was alive when she was already in distress or deceased. And that's heartbreaking. Still, unless investigators establish a connection, we have to treat the phone mystery and Alisa's death as separate. We have the apartment. We have the CVS. We have the airport. We have the phone. We have the surveillance. But there is still a missing piece connecting all of them. And that may be the part investigators will need to explain. Because Alisa's family deserves to know how she went from a normal afternoon shopping trip to lying in a drainage ditch near an airport. They deserve to know what happened during her final hours. And they deserve to know why she died. For now, we know that surveillance captured what police described as her final moments. So now I want to hear from you. After everything you've heard, what is the biggest unanswered question in this case? Is it the phone? Is it the CVS to airport journey? Is it the delay in finding her? Or is it what caused her to collapse? Pick one and tell me why. And has your opinion changed since the beginning of this video? Maybe at the start you thought this was a kidnapping. Maybe now you're leaning toward a medical emergency. Maybe you're still convinced there is more to the story. Whatever you think, drop it in the comments. Just remember that Alisa's family is grieving. We're talking about a real woman who was loved by her children and grandchildren. She wasn't just a headline. She wasn't just a missing person case. She was a mother. She was a grandmother. She was someone's friend. And her family spent days desperately trying to bring her home. Now they are left with grief and questions. And until investigators release more information about the circumstances surrounding her death, there are still things we simply cannot answer. So let's not turn theories into facts. Let's not accuse people without evidence. Let's keep asking questions. And let's keep the focus on Alisa. If you stayed until the end, thank you. And if you haven't subscribed to Case Watch yet, please do that now. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I put a lot of effort into these stories, and your support helps me continue. And before you leave, I really want your opinion. How did Alisa get from that shopping trip to the airport? What do you think about the strange messages from her phone? And after hearing what police say the surveillance footage showed, What do you believe happened during her final moments? Drop your thoughts below. I will be reading the comments.